Hello everyone, my name is Ashish and welcome to the Stang Instance channel. So in this lecture we are going to discuss about a REST template, and also we are going to see how we can use this REST template in our Spring Boot application to consume the RESTful web services in our application or in our Spring Boot project. So in this lecture, I am going to I'm going to use a CRUD operation to show the uses of REST template. So the first question, it may come to your mind that what is a REST template? So basically, a REST template is a class, as you can see in uh, Spring website, that REST template is a class, and this class is used to create the application that consume RESTful web services. So what do you mean by consume here? So consume means, let's say that we have a certain API or a RESTful web services running in somewhere in a server, and inside your application you want to consume that API response, or you want to use that API response. Then for that we have to use a REST template class. So REST template is a class and it is used to create your application which consumes or uses the response from the other RESTful web service. I hope this is clear that why the REST template is used. So now the question comes, how we can use this. So for that we have certain methods by which we can use this REST template to consume the RESTful web services. So before moving to the methods, I will like to show you the constructors for creating the object of a REST template. So basically there are three ways to create the instance of the REST template. The first is REST template. So here we don't pass any argument inside a constructor. So is used to create the instance of a REST template using a default setting. And the another constructor we have, in which we pass one parameter with the name client HTTP request factory object to create the instance of the REST template. And the third constructor, in which we pass the list of the message converters. So basically these are the three ways in which we can create the instance or the object of the REST template. So you can use any of this constructor according to your requirement over your project. So there are certain methods by which we consume the RESTful web services, right? So here are the methods. Like we have delete method. So in delete method we pass the argument as URL. So this URL will be the RESTful web service URL which is running in any server, and here we pass URI variable. So URI variable contain it will of map type. So this will contain the ID or any data which we want to pass, and according to this data we want to delete a certain object. Then for that we can use this. So there are other overridden methods, uh, like sorry overloaded methods here, like delete, as here we can pass URL variables in our object array, and also we can delete delete the resource to a specific URL, right? So in this way we also have an exchange method. So basically the exchange method is used to consume the RESTful web services. Or so here are certain overloaded methods, in which we can see different parameters. So this we can use according to our requirement. So here you can see URL method. So let's say I want to create some resource, then here we have to use the URL, and also we have to pass HTTP post method dot post to create the resource. and request entity and the request type. So all these are the methods present. So we can use any of the method to with the REST template according to our requirement. Or also we have some specific like method if you want to create or generate any like objects, and directly we can use post for entity. So here we don't have to pass http post method inside the parameter of this method, right? So in the same way we have a put method to, if you want to update any resource or object, then we can directly use post put method rather than using the exchange method. We can do all these CRUD operations using exchange method also, but in the parameter we have to do the changes. In the parameter we have to use the http particular method to do that. But also we can use a particular method also to do the CRUD operations. So these are the certain methods which you can see inside talk.spring.io website. So now let's jump to our like project. So so here is my like project in which I have already created one project with the name like REST template. So let me delete all these classes, remove these classes. Now you can see this is a REST template project which I have created from Spring Inslicer, and I have imported over my Eclipse. And also I have created certain like packages, like we have controller, model, repository, service. So inside the controller, I have created a controller class which has endpoints like to add employee. So basically this API I have already created. So this method is used to add employee, to get all the employee from the database, and to get a particular employee using employee ID. And also we can do the update employee and delete employee with a particular employee ID. So these are the all endpoints which I have created, and this uh, like API is running in my local server, right? So I don't have my own like server, so I will use this local server too, and I will then show you how we can consume all this RESTful web services endpoint in our own like project. All right. So yeah, so now so here you can see I will use like MySql database. So for that I have already configured in my application.properties file. All right. So now I will show you that this API is already working, and it is up in my local server. So let's hit this endpoint stack instance and get all employee to check whether this endpoint is working or not. So this is my instance, stack instance slash get employee. So let's hit the send button. So here you can see that we got the response. So in this we have two object in my database. Now let's go to the database also and let's verify. So here you can see this is my employee table, and inside this here I have two data with ID 1 and 2, and the employee name Ashish and Manish Ashish, right? So these are the two data already I have in my database, and this is like running in my local server. So now what I will do, I will create another controller inside this controller package itself, and I will create one service class inside this service package. All right, and then inside my new controller, I will use the REST template, and then I will show you how we can consume all this RESTful web services endpoint over a different controller. All right, so let's create one controller inside this controller package. Let's say with the name something REST template controller. Now let's create one more class inside my service package. with the name something rest template service. So what I will do, so basically this is my construct controller. So let's make this as a rest controller, and also I will use the request mapping for the class label, and I will mark this as a something with the name, let's say, yeah, something with the name rest template. Yeah, this is my request mapping. Now let's create a endpoint, and inside this endpoint I will use a REST template to consume these endpoints which already I have created. All right. So let's go to the controller. So here, let's create our endpoint. So first we are going to fetch all the employee data. So let's create one endpoint. So response entity, and this I will mark as a string. So get something get all employee. So this is my endpoint name. So inside this endpoint name, so this, for this I will use the get mapping, and I will provide the URL get all employee is my request mapping. And here from this controller I'm going to call the method inside this REST template service. So let's auto wire this service class inside my controller first. Private REST template REST template or service, something like this. Let's import this, and first auto wire this REST template. Yeah. So now I am going to create the method inside my like service class. Yeah. So let's go to our service class. Let's make this mark this with the service. So now let's create our service class method. So this method to get all employee. So public, and I will use the return type as or simply I can use a string also here. Okay. So let's all employee name of my method inside the service. Now what I have to do, I have to use the REST template. So for that, let's create a REST template object. So this is my REST template class. Okay. So REST template goes to new. So let's create the object of this or the instance of this REST template with the default constructor. And now in the REST template, I have to use the header also. So here I will use exchange method. So first of all, I will create the HTTP headers. Okay. So here inside the header, we can set means the data for which we want to accept. So for that, what we can do, headers dot we have set accept method also. So yeah, so here we can pass something arrays dot to as list. Okay, and inside this we can pass something media type dot application dot json. So let's check. Okay, so I have imported with our wrong packages for the media type. So media types would be imported from org.springframework.http method. So with that, we will get our change to application JSON. Yeah. So the media type will be application JSON. So this I have added in my header instance. Okay. So now, I have to. So here I will show you. Now I will use REST template dot exchange method. So in the exchange method, we have a certain overloaded method. So let's see which I can use. So request entity class HTTP method. Yeah. So this I can use, I believe. So here you can see there are four parameter of this exchange method. First the URL, then the method, then the request entity, and the response type also. So now let's pass the request entity here. Okay, so for that I will create one HTTP entity and I will keep a string. So entity instance name. So let's create a new HTTP entity, and inside this we can pass our like as a parameter. I will pass parameters, and here I will pass headers. Yeah, so basically this is, so I set this header in this HTTP entity. All right, and the header is also set here, and this exchange method will expect some result. So like return type, so response entity. So here I will use string itself and response. Yeah. So now I need to pass the URL from which we want to consume the RESTful web services. So let's say, as I said, I have already created. So I have already created this like web services in the employee controller, and you can see this API is already running in my local server. So let's use this URL. So let's save this URL first. Over private static final string get all employee URL. Okay, so here let's pass this URL. So this is my URL, like local host stag instance dot get employee, and let's use this URL directly. Sorry, so we not need to create here. So I have created this in my Rome controller. So we need to create over our REST service. Okay. So let's use this get all employee URL inside this URL, and the method we can use simply http method dot get. All right, and in the request entity we can use this entity. So we can use this entity, and in the response part, response type, so it will be a string. So we can use a string dot class. So this is my implementation, and by this you can see I am consuming our RESTful web services using the exchange method. And let's return this response from here. So I have created this endpoint, this method, which is going to consume the RESTful web service, and it is going to return. So now let's go to our controller and let's call this method all employee. So here you can see I can use all employee method. Sorry. So here from here, what I can do, I can use this REST template service dot all employee method to return, and directly I can use this return method. So when I will call this endpoint, then it will call this method, and here it will use the REST template to consume the response from this RESTful web services URL, and it will uh, pass in a response. And for this, as I'm using exchange method, so here we have to write the method for this HTTP method and the entity, and in the entity we pass the header, and let's say for some of the live project we have to use the authorization also, right? So for that we can use in the same way we can pass the authorization in our header. So for that we can use header dot, and then we can use add method. All right, and in the key we can pass directly authorization. All right, and here and for the key we need to call any service to get the key, right? So in this application I don't have any you using any Spring Security or any token to validate, so that's why I will not use this authorization key in my header. But in your like live project or in your work project, you have to pass this token also to validate your RESTful web services, right? So for that you can do in the same way. You can pass the like your token ID in the header, and here in the value you need to call another service in which you will call the method which will pass you the token, right? And this token you can set in the authorization key in your header, and same way you can pass this with the entity, right? So for now I don't have any token like Spring Security implemented in my testing application, so I will not use this header, but you can use according to your requirement. All right, so this service has been implemented. So now save it, and now let's go and test it. So for this URL we have to write REST template and then get all employee. So let's go to the postman, and here REST template, and then we have to use endpoint. So get all employee. So go to the endpoint and paste it. So this is our, sorry, I have pasted here, yeah. So let's copy this, go to the postman, and here paste it, and now so this is the get method, and hit the send button. So you can see we got this response from here, right? It means that we are able to implement means we are able to consume the RESTful web services using a REST template. So in the same way, we can use means we can see how we can consume the other endpoints of our like RESTful web services, right? So here we have, now let's see which we can implement. So we have another method. So now let's check this endpoint, add employee endpoint, which is already running in on our local. So let's create another endpoint in our REST template controller, and let's try to consume this. So let me copy and paste it here, and then I will change the name. So first of all, I need to change this. So this will be a post mapping, and this will be like add employee URL I can use, or something create employee. And here this is like create method. So here I will write create employee. Okay, so now I need to change this method also in my service. So now let's go to our REST template service. Let's create one method using a REST template, which will try to create the endpoint. So public, okay, and now the return type will be response entity itself, and here I will pass employee class. So let's name this as a create employee method, import this from this model. Okay, and here I need to pass this employee. Yeah, so here you can see, let's go to the controller again, and here so here our request body will come. So here we will pass the object of the employee which we want to add in our database. So that will be come in a request body. So let me receive that object by using request body annotation, employee, and this is employee. So here we are handling this. Now let's call this method create employee, and here we are using this service. Now let's go to our create employee method and let's complete this. So this now so in the same way I need to pass the header also, or we can so here you have to decide that which method you are going to use. Are you going to use exchange method of the REST template? So if you are going to use the exchange method, then here you need to pass http method dot post, right? But here I will show you a different method of the REST template to do this operation. Okay, so in the same way, let's use the REST template dot. So what I will do, I will use this post for entity method. So this post for entity method, okay, so here post for entity method do the same thing. So here we don't have to mention this http method post here, only we need to pass the URL. So let's write the URL. Let's copy this, paste it here. Now let's change the name, create employee URL, and everything will be same. Let's go to the employee controller. So add employee, back to the service, and here change this URL. So now stag instance slash add employee. So this is my URL. So I will use this URL in my post for entity. Okay, and in the request you need to pass the employee. All right, and in the response type I want to be employee dot class object. All right, and this is expecting some return type. So let's return this. Okay, so So with this method also we can do, or otherwise what we can do, we can simply use the exchange method also, but in that we have to pass this header. So for that we have to use this code, and we have to pass here, and here we need to use post method, and the URL should be used as a create employee URL, and in the response type you should pass employee class, but here I'm showing you with a different method, post for entity. Okay, so this method is ready. Now let's go to our controller and let's check the endpoint is ready. So here, okay, so here we have to change this response entity employee. Yeah, so this is also ready. So let me check the name of this method. This is create employee. What is this? And rest template. Okay, I have not saved this class, so that's why it's showing the error. Yeah, now it should be fine. Yeah, so I have saved and my server get restarted because I am using the dev tool. So as I do save, so it will start my server again in the background. So now let's go to the um, postman, and let's just check whether we are able to add a new employee or not. So let's go to our postman, and here add employee rest template, I will use the post method. Okay, and another let's pass some. I will not pass the employee id for now, because employee id should be auto generated. I will show you here. If you will see in the model, I have marked this employee ID as a generated value annotation, so it will auto generate. Fine, so I don't need to pass any ID here. So I will change this to the employee name as a tag instance, and department should be something IT. This is fine. Now let's hit and send this. So you can see we are getting 200 OK response, and we are able to create with the employee ID 4. Now let's check by calling. Yeah, so it means that we are able to create a new object in our database using the REST template. Okay, so for that we are using the post for entity method of the REST template class. Now let's verify this by calling get all employee. Go to the postman, get all employee, do the get method, hit this. So now you can see we are fetching all the object present in our database, and you can see just this object we have added. Okay, so we verified that we have successfully added a new employee object in our database using our RESTful web services, right? So now let's check the another implementation. So next we will check how we can get the employee or from a particular employee ID. So let's see how we can use this. Go to the controller and again create. So this will be now get mapping, get employee. So this will be the get employee, and here we need to pass some ID because I want to fetch particular employee with the ID. Okay, so get employee by ID. Okay, fine. So here we don't need to use the request body because here we are using the ID we are passing. So we can use the path variable annotation to capture this ID. Okay, and here let's pass this ID, and let's get employee by ID. So this method is not there. So let's create this method inside our REST template service class. Yeah, so we have created this REST inside our REST service class. Now what I will do, so I need to take the particular employee. So for that we can use exchange, we can use one method with the name something get for object. Okay, so let me show you this method REST template that get for object. So here you can see the REST get for object method is there. Okay, so we can use this method get for object, and in the same way you need to pass the URL, response type, and the URI like variable. So let me add the URL for this. Get employee by id URL. So here we need to check which request mapping you are using. Okay, get employee we are using, fine. Let's go to the Eclipse. Here let's pass this, and again here we can pass ID. Okay, so this ID will be here. Now I need to pass this URL, copy this and paste it here. So I need to pass the response type for this. So response type is will be of employee class dot class. So here we will not use response entity. So simply we will use employee class as a return type. All right, and now we need to pass the URI like variable. So for that, I will create one map, and in the key I will as a string and the value as a integer. So here I will use the integer. So let's create one hash map. Yeah. So in this hash map, I will param dot put method to add. So I need to add this key. So this key should be matched with your URL. So inside here you can see I'm using ID. So this should be matched with this, and here ID is coming from this. Okay, so let's use this ID here, and I need to pass this param directly. Now you can pass this param in this parameter of this method. So we have implemented this method, and directly we can use the return statement here. Okay, so here you can see I will fetch the particular employee by its ID using a get for object method of the REST template. All right, so this is the method which we are using of the REST template to fetch the employee with its ID. So now let's go to the controller, and here we can use employee as a return type. Okay, I hope this is like clear to you. So now I have completed my implementation. Now go to the let me copy this employee. Now go to the postman, and here paste this, and here I need to pass. So I will fetch this employee ID with the employee ID with the 4. So here you need to pass 4, and this is the get method. Hit send. So here you can see we got 200. Okay, and we are able to fetch this particular employee with this employee ID, right? So here we are able to implement or to consume the RESTful web services for a employee with a particular ID. So now let's check how we can use another So in the same way we can do with the update method also, and also with the delete method. Okay, so now let's implement quickly with the update method. So let me create the endpoint first. So this is the update. So for that I will use put mapping. Okay, update employee, and here simply we can update with the particular id also, and directly we can do with the particular object also. So this is like totally depend on us. So I will use directly update employee. Okay, so with the directly object, let's change update employee. Here I need to remove this parameter. So this is my endpoint. So update employee is my method name inside my service class. So this method is not present there. So let's try to create this method in my REST template service. So here again I will show you REST template. So for that what we can use, we have a different method. Here you can see we can use a put method also to update. All right, or also we can use exchange method also, right? But already I have shown you how we can use the exchange method. So we can use this exchange method to do the CRUD operations, to put method also. For updating any object we can use exchange method. Only we need to pass http method dot put method inside the parameter of the exchange method, and also the required parameters. So here I will show you the another method. So with the put method also we can do, and here these are the over like see the overloaded method. So for this what we will use, I will use this URL and the request parameter method. So here we need to pass the URL. So let me frame this URL for updation. Copy this and again paste it here. Update employee. Okay, so this is update employee URL. Let's go to the employee controller. Let's check the request mapping. Copy this. Let's go to the template here. Paste it here, and here we don't require any particular IDs because we will directly use the put method to do this operation. Okay, so here let's use this URL, paste it here, and here you can see it's required a request. So now let's go to the controller endpoint, and here we need to pass the object which we want to update directly in the request body. So let me use a request body annotation, and employee class with the employee class. Yeah, so now I need to pass this employee object inside the parameter of the update method. Employee employee. All right, so now we have to pass this in the parameter of this put method. So by this we have implemented our put method, and let's directly return this. So this will update and then it will return the object. All right, so okay, so this put method does not return anything. So what we can do, we can simply use the void, and also we need to remove here void. We can remove this return statement from here, and also we can remove this statement from here. Now do save all. Okay, so this put method does not return anything, although from here we can return any information according to your requirement. So in the endpoint you can do return, and you can do any string or any object saying with the method update successfully. But for now I am not doing all that part, but in your live project or in your work project you have to write in a such manner, right? So only I am showing how we can use this REST template. So this update employee method will be called, and here I am going to use the put method of this REST template class. All right, so this is all completed. Now let's save this again. Now let's go to the here. Before that, let me check my request mapping. So this is update employee. Copy this, go to the postman, and here update employee. So this will be the put method, and here in the request body I need to update this employee with the employee ID 4 with the name instance updated, and also ID updated. So this I want to update with this employee name and with this department for the employee ID with value 4. Okay, now let's hit send. So here you can see we are 200. Okay, and at the request return type was void. So now how we can verify? Let's go to the Eclipse and again get all employee. So with that we will get all the employee present in our database. So here we can use get method, and now you can see that we return all the object present in, and now you can see that employee 4 has been updated, right? So we have seen how we can use the REST template for updating any object of the RESTful web services which is running in any server. So now we have another method also. Let's also see this delete employee how we can use. So let's go to our REST controller quickly. So I know this lecture is going a little bit lengthy because I'm going to show you all the operations, all the CRUD operations, right? So maybe it may go a little bit longer, but it will be like really helpful for you to implement and to learn this. So, so this is delete employee. So here I will use at the rate delete mapping method. Okay. So let me update this method name delete employee. So here we are not going to, so here we are going to pass, we are going to delete employee with a particular ID. So let's pass this ID here. So as the ID will come in the URL, so I need to capture that. So for that I will use path variable int ID, and I need to pass this ID here. This will be the delete employee name. So this will be the void again, no problem. Let's create this delete employee method inside the service. Yeah, so I have created this delete employee method. So this delete employee method. So now let's see which REST template method we can use to delete. So let me call the REST template object dot. So here you can see number of methods are there. So we can simply use delete method also for this, right? So here I will use this delete method in which we have two parameter URL and a URI like variable. All right. So let's change. So basically what I'm doing, I'm using this variable in my controller class, but generally we use this URL to be defined in application.properties file. All right, so in the next lecture, I will show you how we can define this in these URLs in my application properties file, and how we can fetch here in my service class. But for now, I'm using this service, means hard coding this URL here itself, okay, in this service class itself. So that we will do in the next lecture. Now let's concentrate here. Delete employee URL. So let's check the URL, delete employee and the employee ID, okay. Go to the here, delete URL, and then you need to pass the employee ID. So now you will see I'm writing employee ID here, okay. So this is the URL of my RESTful web services, which is running already in the server with this URL for deleting employee. So this URL I need to pass over here, and I need to pass the URI variables also. For that I will use the map again, string. So here I will create one hash map again. Yeah, so now I need to put this param dot put. So in the key I will use the employee ID, this one as the key, and the value will as a ID, and we need to pass this here. Okay, so I have successfully implemented this to for delete also. And now let's go to the controller and check, yeah, everything is fine. And here we will delete a employee with a particular ID. Okay, so let's save this. So our server has been started again. Now let's go to the postman and check whether this endpoint is working or not. So here we need to pass delete. Let me copy this again, delete employee, and here we need to pass the ID to for which I want to delete. So let delete this fourth one, ID with the value 4. So here I will pass the ID 4, and this is a delete method, so we need to use the delete method here. So now let's hit this. So you can see we are getting for 200. Okay, it means our execution is done and the return type was void. So we don't able to see any response. But how we can verify? We can verify by fetching again all the data from the database. So for that we can use this get employee, and this will be get method send. So now you can see only I am getting this two object with the ID 1 and 2, and the fourth one has been deleted. So we are able to implement it successfully, the delete method, and also the CRUD operations, right? So here in this lecture, I have shown you how we can use the REST template to consume the other RESTful web services, or to use the response of the other RESTful web services which is running in other server. So for that we can use the REST template. So for that we need to create the object of the REST template, okay. And also I have shown you that there are three ways to create this object. It means that there are three constructors there, so you can use any of the constructor according to your requirement. And also I have shown you the different methods. So all these CRUD operations we can do with this exchange method itself, right? But I have shown you the other like appropriate or the other alternative option methods are there in the REST template to do these operations. Like for creating, we can do post for entity, and for get any particular employee, we can use get for object method. And also we have to delete, we can use delete method, and to update, we can use directly the put method, right? Or if you want to see all the other like methods, so you can use this Spring Doc like website to learn and to see how we can use. And here you can see, if I will search, let's say, let me search with the like exchange method. So here you can see in the last of this website, the every like description has been given of this particular methods. So you can go through this method and see which is required in your like application. Okay, so yeah, so that is all about the REST template, how you can use the REST template in your Spring Boot application to consume the other RESTful web services. I hope this will be helpful for you. Okay, so thank you and have a nice day.